The security guard kicked over his mop bucket, sending dirty water cascading across the marble floor. "Clean that up again, war hero," Marcus sneered, his uniform crisp and badge gleaming under the casino's neon lights. "And this time, try not to drip on the high roller tables." The other guards laughed as David knelt silently, wringing out his mop with hands that didn't shake, eyes that didn't meet theirs. Around them, slot machines chimed and dealers shuffled cards, the casino's heartbeat drowning out the sound of humiliation. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. I guarantee the ending will shock you. "You know what I heard?" Marcus continued, circling David like a predator. "I heard you were some kind of special ops. That true, Janitor?" David remained on his knees, methodically cleaning the spilled water. The familiar weight of shame pressed down on his shoulders. Not shame for his service, but for the powerlessness that had become his daily uniform. His movements were precise, economical, as if muscle memory from another life guided his hands. "Even in this degradation, my cousin deployed too," another guard chimed in. "Tommy, barely 25, with soft hands and a swagger borrowed from movies. Real soldier, came back with medals, got a job with the FBI, not..." He gestured dismissively at David's janitor cart. "This." The casino floor buzzed around them. Cocktail waitresses weaving between tables in sequined dresses, chips clacking. Like distant gunfire, money changing hands with the fluid grace of practiced deception. Nobody looked their way. The cleaning crew was invisible furniture, part of the background noise of American commerce. David had learned to appreciate that invisibility. It made people careless with their secrets. "I'm talking to you," Marcus said, his voice harder now. He grabbed David's shoulder, forcing him to look up. "Cat got your tongue? Or did they scramble your brains over there in the sandbox?" David's eyes were pale blue, like winter sky after a storm. He studied Marcus's face with a stillness that made the younger man uncomfortable, taking in details, cataloging weaknesses, filing away information with the automatic precision of someone trained to observe. The scar along Marcus's jawline, the slight tremor in his left hand, the expensive watch that didn't match his security guard's salary. "I need to finish my rounds," David said finally, his voice carrying a weight that made Tommy step back instinctively. "You need to learn some respect." Marcus shoved him backward, sending David sprawling across the wet marble. "This is America, not some third world. Is there a problem here?" The voice cut through the tension like a blade drawn from silk. Vincent Castellano, the casino's night manager, approached with measured steps that spoke of authority earned rather than given. His suit was expensive Italian wool, his presence commanding respect even from the security guards who usually acted like they owned the place. David had been watching Vincent for 3 years, learning his patterns, his tells, his carefully constructed facade of legitimacy. Marcus straightened, suddenly aware they had an audience. Other employees had begun to notice, dealers glancing over between hands, cocktail waitresses slowing their circuits. "Just keeping the help in line, Mr. Castellano. The help has a name, and he has work to do." Vincent's tone was neutral, but his eyes carried the weight of unspoken consequences. "Don't you have actual security duties to attend to? I heard there was an incident at table 7. The guards dispersed reluctantly, Marcus throwing one last venomous look at David before stalking away toward the poker room. Vincent watched them go with the patient attention of a man who understood power dynamics, then turned to the janitor still kneeling on the wet floor. "You okay, David?" "Yes, sir." David began wringing out his mop again, as if nothing had happened. But he was aware of Vincent's scrutiny, the way the man's eyes lingered on his movements. There was recognition there, the kind that came from shared experience. Vincent crouched down, speaking quietly so his words wouldn't carry to the nearby tables. "I served too. Marines, 91 to 99. Gulf War, then peacekeeping in Bosnia. I know. That look." For a moment, something flickered in David's expression. recognition, understanding. The acknowledgement that passed between veterans who had seen the elephant and lived to remember its tusks. Then the mask slid back into place, carefully neutral. "Appreciate the help, Mr. Castellano. But I can handle this." Vincent nodded slowly, studying David's face with the same intensity David had used on Marcus. "I know you can. The question is whether you should have to." He paused, seeming to weigh his words. "There's honor in honest work, but there's also such a thing as wasted potential." "Potential for what?" "That depends on what you want." Vincent stood, brushing invisible dust from his immaculate suit. "Think about it." As Vincent walked away, David continued his work with mechanical precision. But his mind was cataloging details. The way Vincent's left shoe showed slightly more wear than the right, suggesting he favored that leg. Old injury, probably shrapnel. The unconscious way he touched his jacket pocket when stressed. The fact that he'd mentioned Bosnia specifically, when most Marines from that era talked about the Gulf. David had spent 3 years, 4 months, and 16 days learning everything about Vincent Castellano. Tonight felt like a test, though. He wasn't sure who was testing whom. Don't miss the ending. Watch the story till the end. You'll never expect what the main character does. The next night, Marcus wasn't there for his shift. Word spread quickly through the casino's underground network of gossip and grievance. He'd been fired for conduct unbecoming. The official story mentioned gambling on shift and inappropriate behavior toward staff. The unofficial story was simpler. Vincent Castellano had made a phone call, and Marcus was gone. The other guards gave David a wider berth, their mockery replaced by wary respect. Tommy nodded when he passed, no longer confident in his borrowed swagger. The cocktail waitresses smiled, small kindnesses from people who understood what it meant to be at the bottom of someone else's pyramid. Vincent appeared during David's break, sliding into the employee cafeteria booth across from him, with the fluid grace of someone comfortable anywhere. The cafeteria was nearly empty. Just a few dealers unwinding after their shifts, and a maintenance worker reading a Spanish newspaper. "Heard Marcus won't be bothering you anymore." David sipped his coffee. Black, no sugar, the way he'd learned. To drink it in forward operating bases where luxury meant the coffee was hot. Didn't ask for that. Didn't need to. I saw the security footage. Vincent leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspirator's whisper. 30-year-old punk shoving around a man who served his country. Bad for morale. Which country? The question came out bitter, unexpected even to David himself. Vincent paused, his expression shifting from casual conversation to something more serious. The one that should be taking care of you. They sat in comfortable silence, two veterans sharing space that civilians couldn't understand. Around them, dealers and waitresses chatted about tips and schedules, normal people living normal lives, unburdened by the weight of memory. David envied them sometimes, their ability to sleep without checking exits, to hear fireworks without flinching, to trust that tomorrow would resemble today. "There's a position opening up," Vincent said finally. "Security consultant. Better. Hours. Better pay. Interested?" David's smile was thin, almost sad. "Appreciate it, but I'm good where I am." "Cleaning up other people's messes?" "Something like that." Vincent pulled out a business card, placed it on the table between them. Heavy stock, embossed lettering, the kind of card that announced its owner's importance. "Offer stands. Think about it." After Vincent left, David stared at the card for a long time. Security consultant. A chance to climb back up from the bottom, to reclaim some dignity and purpose. He folded it carefully and put it in his wallet, next to a faded military ID and a photograph of 8 men in desert camouflage, their faces young and confident beneath the harsh Afghan sun. But that night, as he mopped the same floors where he'd been humiliated, David noticed things with the heightened awareness that had kept him alive in Kandahar and Helmand. The way certain dealers palmed chips during shift changes, movements so subtle they were almost invisible. The hand signals between pit bosses and high-roller regulars, communications that followed patterns he'd seen before in other contexts, other wars. The cash drops that happened in blind spots between security cameras, timed with the precision of military operations. The casino had its own ecosystem, its own rules, its own chain of command. And David had been invisible long enough to map every shadow, catalog every secret, understand the architecture of corruption that kept the money flowing upward while the workers below struggled for scraps. Vincent Castellano wasn't just the knight, manager. He was the keystone holding together something much larger, much more dangerous. And David had spent 3 years learning exactly how to bring it all down. Before the story ends, tell me, what would you do? Write it in the comments. Right now. The FBI raid came on a Tuesday morning in November, 3 weeks after Vincent's offer of promotion. David was finishing his overnight shift, emptying trash cans and checking supplies for the day crew, when federal agents flooded the casino floor like water through a breached dam. They moved with military precision, sealing exits, securing evidence, reading rights to stunned management who had thought themselves untouchable. Badges flashed under neon lights, voices cut through the electronic symphony of slot machines, and suddenly the Temple of Chance became a crime scene. Vincent Castellano was led away in handcuffs, his expensive suit wrinkled, his silver hair disheveled, for the first time in David's memory. As he passed David's station near the employee entrance, their eyes met briefly. Vincent's expression was confused, betrayed, not understanding how his carefully constructed world had collapsed so suddenly. So completely. "I don't understand," Vincent said to the agent holding his arm. "We run a clean operation here." The FBI agent, a woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, glanced at David, then back at Vincent. "Money laundering, tax evasion, connections to organized crime. Your operation was about as clean as a sewer, Mr. Castellano." By dawn, half the management team was under arrest. The charges read like a greatest hits of white-collar criminality: racketeering, wire fraud, tax evasion, money laundering through a network that stretched from Las Vegas to Miami to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. David clocked out at 6 a.m., same as always, his badge registering the end of another shift as if nothing had changed. The parking lot was chaos, news vans with satellite dishes reaching toward the sky, federal vehicles with government plates, reporters shoving microphones at anyone in a casino uniform. David walked to his beaten Honda Civic, invisible in the crowd of spectators and law enforcement. His car was 15 years old, dented, unremarkable, the perfect vehicle for someone who needed to disappear in plain sight. His phone buzzed as he reached for his keys. Unknown number, but he recognized the area code, Virginia, where certain government agencies maintained their headquarters. "This is Agent Sarah Chen, FBI Financial Crimes Division. I think we should talk." David looked back at the casino's flashing neon sign, half the letters already dark in the morning sun. Police tape fluttered in the desert wind like prayer flags. "Marking the end of an era. I think we should too." They met at a diner 20 miles outside the city, the kind of place that served coffee in chipped mugs and minded its own business. Agent Chen was younger than he'd expected, sharp-eyed, professional, with the bearing of someone who had earned her position through competence rather than politics. She sat across from him in a booth with cracked vinyl seats, a manila folder, between them on the scarred Formica table. David Martinez, former Army intelligence, specialist in financial crimes and money laundering, deployed to Afghanistan, 2018-2020. Graduated top of your class from the Defense Intelligence Agency's Advanced Financial Investigation course. David sipped his coffee, still black, still bitter. "You forgot the part where I came home and couldn't get a job better than pushing a mop." That was intentional. Chen's voice was matter-of-fact, delivering information like a briefing officer. "We've been tracking the Castellano organization for years, but Vincent was careful. Never hired anyone with a law enforcement or military background for sensitive positions. Background checks, polygraphs, the works, Except nobody checks the cleaning crew. Exactly. You were perfect, overqualified, underemployed, invisible. We needed someone on the inside who could observe without being noticed, someone with the training to recognize financial crimes when they saw them. David stared out the diner window at the desert landscape, endless and empty under the climbing sun. So the whole thing was a setup? The job application? The hiring? All of it? We may have influenced the hiring process, made sure your application reached the right desk, that your background check came back clean despite your military intelligence training. Chen opened the folder, revealing surveillance photos, financial documents, organizational charts. But we didn't arrange for you to be harassed or humiliated. That was real, and we're sorry about it. Though it did make your cover stronger, nobody suspects the victim. David studied the photographs, images of himself taken over 3 years. Mopping floors, emptying trash, invisible among the casino's glittering excess. In some shots, he was visible in the background of surveillance photos focused on Vincent and his associates, a ghost haunting the edges of their criminal enterprise. How long have you known? David asked. Known what? That Vincent Castellano killed my team in Afghanistan. Agent Chen's expression didn't change, but her stillness spoke volumes. How long have you known we knew? The debriefing took place in a sterile federal building conference room 2 days later. David sat across from Chen and 2 other agents, a stack of files between them documenting 3 years of careful observation. The room smelled of industrial carpet and recycled air, anonymous and forgettable, the kind of space where secrets were traded like commodities. Your intelligence led to 17 arrests and the seizure of $43 million in assets, Agent Chen said, her voice professionally neutral. The Castellano organization is finished. Their money laundering network spanned 3 continents. Good. David's voice was flat, empty of satisfaction. There's more. We have similar operations in Vegas, Atlantic City, Reno. Long-term assignments, if you're interested. Real assignments, not janitorial covers. A chance to use your skills properly. David looked at his hands, scarred from years of work, calloused, from mop handles and industrial cleaners, but steady as granite. What about the others? Others? The guards who made my life hell. The managers who looked the other way. The customers who treated me like furniture. Agent Chen exchanged glances with her colleagues, an older man with gray hair and tired eyes, and a younger agent who kept checking his phone. Most of them weren't directly involved in the criminal enterprise. They were just what? Just people. Flawed people in a flawed system. David nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something he'd suspected all along. The banality of cruelty. The way ordinary people could become complicit in systems that dehumanized others. He'd seen it in Afghanistan too. Not just among the enemy, but sometimes among his own people. I have a question. Of course. In your files there, how many names are on the Castellano arrest list? Chen flipped through the documents, her finger, tracing down columns of names and charges. 17, like I said. Vincent Castellano, his lieutenant Frank Morrison, 3 pit bosses, 2 accountants, 6 dealers, and 4 external associates. David reached into his wallet, pulled out the faded photograph of 8 men in desert camouflage. He placed it on the table between them, next to the arrest files. The faces were young, confident, unmarked by the knowledge of what was coming. Brothers in arms who had trusted their leadership, their mission, their country. My unit. Afghanistan, 2019. 8 of us went in on a financial intelligence mission, tracking Taliban money flows through legitimate businesses. We had a local contact, someone who was supposed to be feeding us information about insurgent financing networks. Agent E. Chen studied the photograph, recognition dawning in her eyes like sunrise over a battlefield. David, what are you saying? He smiled for the first time in years, not a happy smile, but something colder, more final, something that belonged in a different kind of war. I'm saying the Castellano investigation was never about the money. He tapped the photograph with one scarred finger. Vincent Castellano was our intelligence contact in Kandahar. He sold us out to Taliban financiers for $200,000. My brothers died because of him. The room went silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of traffic on the interstate. The older agent leaned forward, his tired eyes suddenly alert. Vincent Castellano was never deployed to Afghanistan. His service record shows Bosnia, 1995-1996. Check again. David's voice was patient, almost gentle. Vincent Castellano, Staff Sergeant, 2nd Battalion, 1st Marines, deployed to Afghanistan. As a financial intelligence liaison, 2018-2019, discharged under other than honorable conditions for accepting bribes from foreign nationals. Agent Chen was already typing on her laptop, accessing databases, cross-referencing records. Her face grew pale as information populated her screen. The casino, the cover, the federal cooperation, that was all real, David continued. But it was never about bringing down a crime family. It was about getting close enough to the man who killed my team, learning his operation, understanding how he built his new life on their graves. David! Chen's voice was tight with growing understanding. Vincent Castellano is in federal custody. He's safe in protective holding until trial. I know. David stood, straightening his janitor's uniform one last time, a costume he would never need to wear again. That's why I waited 3 years to call you. Had to make sure you'd arrest everyone else first, clean up the organization, tie up all the loose ends. I don't understand. David walked to the conference room door, paused. With his hand on the handle, through the small window, he could see federal agents moving with sudden urgency down the hallway, not toward the elevator, but toward the secure section where high-value prisoners were held. How many people did you arrest at the casino? He asked quietly. 17. How many people were on Vincent's payroll? Chen's face went white as she consulted her files. 19. Why only 17 arrests? The agents scrambled for their phones, calling the detention center, checking holding cells, verifying prisoner counts. Agent Chen's voice was barely a whisper. 2 people are missing from the arrest list. David opened the door. In the distance, alarms were beginning to sound, the harsh electronic wail of a security breach, the sound of carefully laid plans reaching their conclusion. I just waited for the other 2 to walk in.